Welcome to the deep dive. Ever wonder why you handle relationships the way you do?
The big question.
Totally. So today we're looking at exactly how your romantic past kind of shapes your future. We're drawing on a report that digs into the lasting impact of, old flames.
Yeah.
On trust, communication, all that stuff.
Yeah. And expectations, too. Big one.
Yeah, right. And our goal here is pretty simple. Just offer some useful insights into those relationship patterns, hopefully without making it too overwhelming.
Let's dive in. It's actually quite fascinating how our past loves sort of create a blueprint.
A blueprint, okay.
Yeah. Like positive experiences where we felt trust, felt secure. They help build this belief that, future partners can be reliable, too. Honest.
And that makes it easier to be vulnerable, I guess, less guarded.
Exactly. It can really speed up intimacy because you're just naturally less defensive from the get-go.
Okay. And what about communication? If you learned good skills in a past relationship?
Oh, absolutely crucial. Things like really listening, not just waiting to talk, expressing yourself clearly, handling conflict constructively. Those become massive assets later on. They really deepen the emotional connection.
So good experiences kind of set a standard.
They do. They subtly calibrate what you expect. You felt that mutual respect, the empathy, the support.
Yeah.
So you're probably less likely to settle for something that feels off. And importantly, you're more likely to bring those good things to the relationship yourself.
It's interesting, though, the report mentioned that sometimes those high expectations can backfire if they're not met.
That's a fair point. The key is realistic calibration. Understanding no two people, no two relationships are exactly the same. But having that benchmark of positivity is generally helpful.
Even like that first love, maybe the one that was a bit clumsy or idealized, does that still count?
Oh, definitely. Even if it wasn't perfect, it still taught you something about how relationships work, didn't it?
True.
And it often creates that desire, to feel those good feelings again.
Right. And what's this relationship nostalgia thing?
Yeah. That's basically just fondly remembering the good parts of past relationships. And it sounds simple, but it can actually boost good feelings in your current situation.
How so?
Well, it can fuel optimism about love in general. Remind you that good connections are possible.
Okay. But let's flip the coin, the harder stuff. What happens when past relationships involve, say, betrayal, dishonesty?
Yeah, that's where things get tough. That can plant some really deep seeds of mistrust.
Like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Pretty much. Your internal alarm system goes into overdrive. You might start seeing threats where there aren't any, reading into neutral comments or actions.
Leading to jealousy, maybe? Constant questioning?
Very common, unfortunately. That hypervigilance takes a toll.
And if the past involved rejection or things felt really unstable?
That often fosters anxiety, a real fear of abandonment, maybe needing constant reassurance.
Oof, sounds exhausting.
It is. And it often ties back to self-worth, too. You might internalize it, start believing maybe you don't deserve stability or love.
Which could then lead to pulling away, maybe, to protect yourself.
Precisely. Past hurt can definitely trigger avoidance, becoming emotionally unavailable, shying away from intimacy, hesitating to commit.
It's self-protection, but it backfires.
Exactly. It prevents the very closeness you might actually crave, and communication often takes a hit, too.
How so?
Well, if discussions went badly before, you might just avoid conflict altogether, or get defensive really fast, or just shut down.
Yeah, I could see that. And these negative experiences, they can just create a generally pessimistic view.
For sure. You start expecting bad outcomes, projecting past hurts onto new partners. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes.
And that constant comparing a new person to an old flame, good or bad.
It's a real barrier. It stops you from actually seeing and appreciating the person who's right there for who they are.
So we see these echoes, these impacts. Is there like a deeper reason why these patterns stick? The report mentioned attachment styles.
Yes. That's a really helpful framework. Basically, the idea is that our earliest bonds, usually with caregivers, kind of set up a template for how we approach closeness later in life.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, if care was generally consistent and responsive, people often develop a secure attachment. They're usually comfortable with both intimacy and independence.
Sounds ideal.
It's a good foundation. But if care was, say, inconsistent, that can lead to an anxious attachment style. Craving closeness, but also fearing abandonment, maybe seeming a bit clingy.
Okay.
And if care was more distant or dismissive, that might foster an avoidance style. Valuing independence highly, maybe uncomfortable with too much closeness, pushing people away.
Right. And there's one more.
Yes, disorganized attachment.
Yeah.
This often stems from more chaotic or frightening early experiences. People might crave closeness, but also be deeply afraid of it. Their behavior can seem inconsistent. Big struggles with trust and managing emotions.
That sounds really tough.
Differ.
But these styles aren't set in stone, right?
Absolutely not. That's crucial. They can evolve with awareness and new experiences. They're tendencies, not life sentences.
So these early blueprints, we kind of carry them into adult relationships and repeat things.
Often unconsciously, yes. We might be drawn to partners who feel familiar, even if that familiarity comes from an unhealthy dynamic.
Ooh, tricky.
Yeah. Or we might replicate communication styles. We learned avoiding conflict, getting aggressive, shutting down. Those first loves, toxic relationships, they all leave these echoes.
You learn to expect certain things, even bad things.
Exactly. If you've been mistreated, it can be hard to trust kindness, hard to even recognize what healthy looks like sometimes.
So this emotional baggage, it's real. Unresolved heartbreak, guilt, fear.
All of it. It can lead to overreactions, mistrust, making it hard to be vulnerable. Guilt over past mistakes can mess with self-worth, maybe even lead to self-sabotage.
And the fear of repeating bad experiences, that keeps you stuck.
It absolutely can. Causes anxiety, avoidance, makes commitment feel terrifying. It just builds barriers.
Okay, so knowing all this, how do we actually start to, break these patterns, move forward?
It really starts with self-awareness, honestly looking back, reflecting. What keeps happening? What are my patterns?
Not blaming, but understanding.
Right. Then, setting new goals. What do I want a healthy connection to look like? And importantly, setting healthy boundaries.
Can you give an example, like boundaries?
Sure. If maybe past partners always interrupted you or demanded all your time, a new boundary might be clearly stating you need uninterrupted time to speak, or carving out specific alone time and asking your partner to respect that.
Okay. Clear communication.
And self-love, forgiveness for yourself and maybe others. Trying to communicate effectively now.
Yeah.
Actively letting go of the old baggage, challenging those negative beliefs about love or yourself.
It's a process then, not an overnight fix.
Definitely a process. Requires patience and effort.
So the influence of the past is undeniable, we see that. But the key takeaway seems to be that understanding these patterns gives you power.
Exactly. Power to choose differently, to build healthier connections going forward. Your history doesn't have to be your destiny.
So maybe a good exercise for listeners is to take a moment, reflect on their own history, what positive lessons are worth keeping, and maybe more importantly, what negative patterns might be repeating without you even realizing it.
Yeah, that self-reflection is key.
This has been a fascinating deep dive, just scratching the surface, really. Hopefully it offers a starting point.
For sure. Lots more to explore with things like attachment theory if people are interested.
Definitely. So the final thought for everyone listening, what part of this resonated most? And what questions does it spark about your own journey in relationships?